La, la, la. In today's episode, we are going over how I got the physical therapy job I wanted directly out of school. So, thank you very much to Nancy and Corey, two PT students at Champion right now. And they gave me sort of this question, right? So, I actually got a couple questions about kind of how to get your job and how to interview. And to be honest, I don't own a clinic. So, I think there's other people that are a little bit better answering these questions. And I will actually answer this question in some future episodes. But I think what's going to be really valuable is some additional insight about how I was able to get the job that I wanted. And it's not the traditional advice, kind of a weird path that I took. I used a lot of the skills I had kind of learning from the marketing and business world. And I feel like I got the job that I wanted, although it was very challenging and I wasn't in an easy place to do it. So what's kind of the problem? So essentially, when physical therapists graduate, right, or maybe you graduate and you have your first job, you don't like it too much. There are a lot of obstacles you have to kind of navigate, some pitfalls that we know of. So for one, a lot of folks are scared of the whole PT kind of thing. So essentially, if you start your first job and you're seeing like 30 patients per day, you have very little time to actually use your brain. You're just trying to tread water and get through these patients. And at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily feel good. And you're doing it because you want to try to make some more money for the company. Two things. One, I get it. Not everyone wants to do this. It's stressful. It doesn't feel like you can use your skills to the best of your abilities. But I think the other thing to keep in mind is that you're in a business, right? You're working for a company and they have to make money. So there's going to have to be a little bit of give and take here, right? But essentially, you're trying to avoid this problem. Second part is that a lot of folks get into physical therapy because there's a certain population they want to work with. For me, it was basically folks in strength and fitness, powerlifting, bodybuilding, all that good stuff. Not too many clinics really cater towards that. So I wanted to try to work in that population at some point. I know a lot of folks like, let's say, sports or something along those lines. So we're looking to find a place that has that, right? The other part is that salary is important. So for most PTs, they have kind of a crazy amount of student loan debt and interest, and they're drowning in it. So they need to make some money, right? So you're trying to find a place that has a decent salary. And lastly, for a lot of folks, it's proximity, right? So maybe you want to live in a certain city. Maybe you want to be in a city where your family is, right? Maybe you want to have an easier commute, whatever it is. So the job you get is going to be very important for you for whatever specific reason, right? So what are we going to go over today? First, we're going to talk about what I did because I was placed in a position where I had to do a lot of work to find a job that I really wanted to. It was a little bit natural for me. And looking back on it, I just really like marketing and business. And I kind of saw it as a fun challenge that actually ended up going fairly well with a little bit of work, a little bit of luck. And I think it's something that a lot of other new grads and, folks that maybe don't like their first job looking for their second one can take advantage of. And, it works pretty well, or at least it worked well in my case. Right. And then I'm going to go over some practical recommendations. So essentially what you can do, basically learning from some of the stuff that I did over the course of time that I find very useful. All right. So first and foremost, before we get going, if you like the content that I put out on a regular basis, I would like you to sign up for the Fitness Pain-Free Mini Course. It's a natural extension to the stuff I normally teach. I have a few really good lessons in there. The first one is how traditional schooling has failed us. I love PT school, and I always feel bad saying this, but PT school teaches you basically how not to kill someone and gets your license, which you need to start. That's exactly what you're starting. So if you want to learn how to work in the strength and fitness population, this mini course will help you with that. We go over 7 reasons why people get hurt in the gym. If you don't know why injuries are occurring, then you're going to do a bad job of preventing them in the future, and it's going to make rehab quite a bit tougher. Next is 4 simple steps to gain your clients out of pain. So it doesn't have to be that complicated to do physical therapy. I break it down and make it easy for you. Next is how to build a career of your dreams and earn the respect of your community. And this is kind of along the same topics we're going over today, right? So essentially you can be a phenomenal physical therapist, but if you're not working with the folks you want to, that stinks, right? So I'll teach you how to try to get those folks through the door, build their respect, and then, you'll be really pumped about your career. So if you want to check this out, I'll put a link in the show notes. If you're watching this on Instagram right now, you can easily just check out my profile under the highlights. I have the Fitness Pain-Free Mini Course. Definitely check that out. If you sign up for the mini course, you'll automatically be enrolled into the Fitness Pain-Free Certification waitlist. This is the largest, most comprehensive course I offer. It's for enrollment 4 times per year for a 1-week period. I think it goes live in another about 2 months or so right now. But anyway, you'll be automatically enrolled and you get early access to this, and you'll get a $300 discount if you decide to join. So I think that would be a good thing for you. So give it a go. All right, let's get on to my story. So you don't know, I was born and raised in New Jersey, right? And I actually did a lot of work to grow my network Jersey before I moved out to Colorado. So essentially, I did my undergrad at Rutgers University, and I worked. I think I did something stupid like summer between internships and worked in multiple facilities as a personal trainer while I was in school. And when I graduated, I started working full time as a personal trainer and a strength coach. And I actually did this for several years before I went to PT school. And when I went into PT school, I did a lot of additional networking, both at CrossFit gyms, strength and conditioning gyms, right? Physical therapy clinics, right? I just did a lot of work to try to build my network around me, right? And when I graduated, I had a few different jobs that I was really excited about. However, my wife was at the time finishing up medical school. And if you know anything about medical school, after you finish up, you have to do a residency. And the residency process is actually, it's tough. So essentially, as a student, you look at different residencies around the nation and you rank those, right? 1 to 10 or 1 to 50 or however many that you end up trying to rank for. And then they rank you based on the different candidates that they've actually interviewed. And, essentially all this information goes into some sort of machine or an algorithm and it spits out where you matched to, right? And my wife and I were matched out in Colorado. And I was actually pretty excited about this because Colorado is a very, very cool place, right? But the problem I faced is that I lost my entire network. And I shouldn't say 100% because I still had a little bit of network virtually, right? The internet was around at that point. But I lost all of those job opportunities, right? Down the drain, right? All the coaching jobs, all my personal training clients, right? All the CrossFit gyms I have established relationships with, all gone, right? And that kind of stunk. So essentially, I was disconnected overnight. We just drove all the way out to Colorado, and I was essentially kind of tasked with trying to find a job that I wanted, right? And it was tough because I talked to a lot of individuals, right? But a lot of headhunters, people that are trying to find me a job. And they essentially told me that there's no way I was going to find a job in outpatient physical therapy. They said I'm going to have to move out of the state. There's no jobs available. And essentially, at the time, the Denver marketplace, there were a lot of physical therapists, right? And not a lot of jobs. So that was tough, right? But it's funny because looking back on it, I'm a young, stubborn guy, bootstrapper. I saw it as a challenge. I was like, well, I'm going to do it. I don't care, right? I'm going to make this happen. And I think my wife was freaking out more than I was, but at the end of the day, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make it happen, right? I'll find a way. And at the time I was learning a lot about marketing, a lot about business. And I was just like, I can make this work and, young, have nothing but time. And I saw it as a challenge, right? As opposed to like, kind of cowering and giving up and maybe taking a job in an inpatient hospital or a rehab hospital or something along those lines. I kind of went out of my way to try to find the job that I really wanted to, right? So, first and foremost, I was a little bit picky, right? Although I know I needed a job, I was a little bit picky. So I went to PT school because I actually wanted to be a specific type of physical therapist. I wanted to work in strength and fitness, right? I didn't go to PT school because I just wanted a generic job afterwards, right? I worked for a few years, figured out what I wanted beforehand. But essentially, the ideal setting that I wanted had some mentoring, right? And essentially, hopefully, I had the opportunity for more continuing education. I wanted to do a residency out of school, but the problem was that when I was out in Colorado, I basically had to move away from my wife in order to do a residency, and I just decided against that. It's also way more expensive to be on your own, and there's a variety of reasons why I decided against it, but I wanted to, and I couldn't. So second best option was trying to find a place that had some mentoring and the opportunity for getting more continuing education, right? And the other piece, and I was obsessed with this and still am, is that I just wanted to get extremely good. And it's funny because I talked to a lot of PT students and they kind of feel bad saying this, right? Because it sounds, like you're having an inflated ego. You just want to be the best physical therapist out there. But at the end of the day, that's what you want, right? You essentially want to be a very, very good physical therapist. And that's not selfish because it's going to help other people around you, right? And you really want to be, respected, valued, and admired by your local community too. I think that's actually very, very important. And that was actually very important for me too. And particularly within a kind of a CrossFit, powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting realm, that's where I wanted to be valued, right? The other part is I wanted to work with an athletic population, right? And I knew that most PT clinics are not going to be mostly athletes, and I'm okay with that. That's fine. I specifically wanted to work with more people that are into fitness. Lucky for me, Colorado has a lot of that, right? Which is helpful. But the other thing to think about is if you really like health and you like fitness, consider moving into more of an affluent area, right? Maybe that sounds bad, but the other piece is that folks that have money have the opportunity to care more about their health and wellness. So you're going to end up seeing more folks that like strength and fitness just because of the income bracket kind of that you're working with, right? So that's something to think about. And the other part is that I want to make some Benjamins. I knew I had a lot of debt. I was currently in denial, I think, at that stage, looking at the student loan and just seeing how much interest I was paying. Right. If you guys are interested in that, check out my last Fitness Being Free Show episode. I knew that I needed to make some money. Right. And this was all very important. And these were all the things I was looking for in a clinic. Right. And, I'll talk about this later, but you have to have an idea of where you want to work and the environment that you want to work in. Right. Before you set out to try to find the ideal place to work. Right. If you have no idea where you want to work, then you're not going to be able to find the place. Right. Because you don't know what that even looks like. So what was my journey? So essentially, I sought out to find a job, and I sought out to find the right job for me based on those things that I just talked about, right? So essentially, I just went on to, I don't even know if Google Maps existed at the time, but I went online and I started looking at all the local clinics, right? Every single one that was in, let's say, a 30 to 45-minute drive, right? And what I did was I looked at all of the individuals on the website, and at the time, websites were actually quite poor, right? So most of these PT websites were terrible. But you get an idea of the type of clinicians were there based on their credentials, right? So you get some folks that have CSCS, you have some folks that have OCS, you have some folks that have SFMA, maybe some dry needling. All these things are actually pretty important to me. So I started to narrow in on the clinics where the practitioners there seemed to have the credentials that I was interested in, right? Because that was important to me. The other thing that I did is I reached out to all of my networks, right? Just to see if anyone knew of any clinics in the area that were decent, right? And there were a bunch of clinics in the area that were pretty decent, right? So I just made a list of all these different places that I wanted to go hang out, right? And I called them, right? I called every single one of them. I emailed every single one of them. And if I couldn't reach out to them directly via calling or emailing, I would actually just show up and I would knock on the door and I'd say, hey, my name is Dan, and I'd introduce myself, right? Essentially, I did this for all of the local physical therapy facilities, and there's a lot of them. I think I narrowed it down to around 10 or so, which I ended up visiting. Did the same thing with CrossFit gyms, right? And there's a lot of CrossFit gyms in Colorado, but this is very interesting to me from a CrossFit perspective. One of the things I found, at least at the time with CrossFit gyms, is that they're very, very selective about who they hire and let into their network, right? I think it's because they have such a close-knit community, right, that they really value their members and want to make sure that if they're going to hire someone from the outside, that they're very, very good. And they also typically tend to hire from within, right? And that was what I was seeing. So I did a lot of shadowing of different gyms, a lot of reaching out, a lot of meeting people, right? And essentially, this wasn't just a one-time thing. It wasn't like I went there and I dropped off my resume and said, hey, I'm looking for a job. I went in there and I shadowed and I said, hey, I want to learn more from you. I like the way that you do physical therapy, right? I'd like to get a better idea of how your clinic operates. You got a cool set of clinicians here. They all have some pretty cool credentials. I'd like to learn. I'd like to help as much as possible. So I came in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, excited, and I really wanted to help. The other thing I did, which was very helpful or valuable, I think, for the clinicians, it really kind of perked their interest a bit, is that I came in and I brought coffee, right? I brought donuts. I brought pizza. And if I knew that there was something that maybe one of the clinic directors liked even more, I'd bring that in, right? Because I was trying to make a really good impression, okay? And all things equal, right? Let's say if a clinic is about to hire a new grad, and that new grad has the same skills that you have, right? Going to pay in the same exact amount, but one person, your clinic or potential clinic director, just likes a lot more, right? They're going to hire that person. And, it's bad to say that, but that's probably what's going to happen out there. People like to hire folks that they like, that feel like it's going to be a good fit for their clinic, right? And if you go in there, smile, you're excited to help as much as possible, bring them some good stuff, some coffee, some donuts, that goes a long way, right? So I did this a lot. And I worked for free. So a lot of the CrossFit gyms I went to, I would just teach classes for free. I did it frequently, and I did it to the point where it was making me a little bit mad and upset. It's like, I'm just doing this over and over again, and nothing's kind of clicking for me, right? But yeah, I kept on going and just worked my hardest, and eventually some opportunities pop up, right? If you're working that hard and you're going and you're giving your all at every clinic you go to and all these like facilities, eventually something's going to happen, right? So I'm gonna botch this saying, but the saying goes, the person that's the luckiest is generally the hardest working. So if you're constantly putting yourself out there, there's just going to be more and more opportunities. So it's kind of a numbers game. You just put yourself there, work as hard as you can, and eventually something kind of pops up. So I already kind of went through this, but I reached out to all the networks that I had. So at the time I was in a special interest group for the American Physical Therapy Association. of strength and conditioning, right? And I actually got a couple good places and recommendations to go shadow from that information, right? I reached out to the CrossFit community, basically try to find any different gyms that would have me, right? Where I can go out there and hopefully help as much as I can, put out some seminars, right? Free seminars, help out, do free classes. And then I actually ended up interning for around like 4 or 5 months at CrossFit Verve. And eventually they gave me a job there, right? Reached out to all the professors I had in school. Does anyone know any cool clinics, any people in Colorado I should reach out to? And I did. I reached out to a lot of folks, and all the physical therapists I knew. Essentially, if anyone was connected in this world, I reached out to them. Right, a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, texts, all that stuff went out. Right, and it wasn't just physical therapists. It was also, let's say, CrossFit coaches. It was chiropractors. It was everyone. Anyone that had any sort of potential leverage for me, I reached out. And that's how I had a list of clinics I can go to. They were A, pretty decent because I got a good referral, right? And B, hopefully when I got in there, I'd have a leg up, right? Because I know someone that they know, and that does help out in terms of trying to find a job, right? So what ended up happening, it was just kind of an intersection of everything, right? So essentially I found a clinic that I liked, right? I don't want to say like, because sometimes your first job is not the best job in the world, and that's okay. If you think that you're going to get the best job and some kind of outlandish facility with every single patient that you want to see at all times, right? It's cash based and you get to do everything you want to do. It's probably not going to happen, right? But for me, I found a clinic that I really liked, and they actually had great clinicians there, right? I had the opportunity to do a lot of mentoring. It was at a Physiotherapy Associates, which is now Select. And if you know anything about those companies, they're big and they have a lot of continuing education, right? And they have a lot of courses that were coming specifically to this clinic. So I would get, a lot of free Con Ed, which I did. I attended a ton of Con Ed first few years. I saw a lot of patients, and they actually had a fairly athletic population. One of the things that they had was a few athletic trainers that worked in the facility. They also worked in local high schools. So what happened, it was kind of this system of athletic trainers would send some of their athletes over to the physical therapy clinic, and we would get to work with them. So synergistic relationship that I found, right? And what was interesting is that, like I said, it's an intersection of so many things. Like this clinic was recommended to me by Todd Ellenbecker because I was in the strength conditioning special interest group. If you never heard of Todd Ellenbecker, he's a PT all-star. I believe he's out in Arizona. He's written a lot of research on the shoulder, particularly with tennis athletes. He's a ton of them. Great clinician. So I just kind of reached out to the special interest group, and Todd got back to me and said, hey, check this clinic out, right? And then just say my name. And I did. I said, hey, guys, I know Todd Ellenbecker. He recommended me to this clinic. What was kind of hilarious is that was probably the main reason why I got that job, right? Like, oh, you know Todd? I'm like, yeah, I know Todd. But in reality, I just barely knew him, right, from the special interest group. Like, just reached out to him, and he was able to give me that connect, which was really cool, right? And the other thing is that they found value in me, right? And kind of looking back and trying to see why that was, I think that when I came and I just shadowed, right, and brought them coffee and donuts, they saw me as kind of a go-getter, right? Someone who's really ready to work, right? And the other thing is that I was trying to figure out how I can help them, right? What can I do to help this clinic? And essentially one of the things that's going on is that they did a lot of screening at local high schools. And one of the problems they had is that they didn't have enough manpower to run these things, right? And now, MS guy at the time, still like SFMA and all the stuff that kind of Greg Cook and all those folks are associated with that system have created. And I was familiar with it. And I was like, hey, could I help you guys? Could I go to some of these high schools and do some screens with you? And they said, yep. And it was a great opportunity because I was able to get into some of the coworkers' ears a little bit more, right? And this was from two standpoints, right? Because when you're trying to find the job you want, you're trying to get the people within the clinic to like you and find value in you, but you're also trying to figure out if this clinic is right for you. And one of the ways you do that is you talk to the employees and you get an idea of how much they like their day-to-day, right? Are they satisfied with the population that they're working with, right? Do they hate their job? Are they just complaining the entire time? Are they actually driven? Do they like continuing education? The way they practice, is that reflecting kind of the things that you're learning that you want to learn more about? Or are these folks just, punching the clock and not doing any of the things that you like, right? So I was able to get into their ears more. I was able to figure out, okay, this clinic was kind of right for me, right? And, the clinic saw that too. And lastly, I think a lot of this was just luck because at the end of the day, they were about to hire a new physical therapist. And this was actually a student done a clinical affiliation there. But what happened is that the student was not getting back to the clinical director, right? Clinical director's like, well, we were going to give the job to someone else, but they're not really responding. And you're here and you seem decent. So would you like this job? Right. And it's interesting because the question I got from Corey, right, and was talking about previously, thanks for the question, guys, Nancy and Corey, is what do you do from a job interview perspective, right? And to be honest, most of the jobs I've ever gotten, in fact, the past several, right, have all been through me going out and networking, right, and trying to learn more about these facilities and growing within my community. And then the interview process is pretty easy, right? So even at Champion, where I work right now, talking to Mike and Lenny, when they interviewed me, they're already pretty sure that they were going to give me the job, right? The interview was just to make sure that I wasn't terrible. So when I interviewed, I probably could have killed my chances if I did a terrible job, but it was everything I had done previously in my career that set me up for that point, right? Same thing goes for my first job out of school. I kind of checked all the boxes before I actually went in for an interview process. And I don't even remember if I had a formal interview process. I think they just ended up offering me the job potentially when I was just at the high school doing the screen and trying to help out, right? But I had already kind of shadowed for several weeks at that point. So they had kind of learned a lot more about me than a traditional just interviewing process. So I think that was very, very helpful. So what are recommendations for new grads trying to find that dream job, right? Want to try to get your first job, want it to be nice. You have some boxes you want to tick and find a facility that kind of ticks those boxes. So first and foremost, you got to make some goals. I'm a huge believer in this, right? So if you don't know what kind of facility is ideal for you, you're going to have a hard time for one. And once you get involved inside a clinic, you may find that you hate certain aspects of this. The more specific, the better. Just keep in mind that work is work, right? In the day, it's like, you're not going to find a job where you go lay on a couch and someone massages you all day. Like that doesn't exist. You got to do some work, got to help people. So I think you got to be reasonable with your expectations. But the other part is that if you can be a little bit better about what you want, more specific about what you want, then you can zoom in a little more on that target job, right? So some things to think about. What kind of populations do you like to work with? Are you like me? Do you like strength and fitness? Are you more an athletic guy? Do you like to see more baseball? Do you like to see more football? At Champion, we cater to the average kind of high school, college, professional athlete. That's our niche. We're really, really good at that. And the majority of folks we see are kind of in that realm, right? What kind of hours do you want, right? Do you have children, right? Are you in a place where you can't afford to work till late at night, or you can't afford to work early in the morning because you have to drop off your kids or whatever it is, right? Or hours important to you, right? How about proximity to work? Are you willing to drive 30, 45 minutes to work every single day, or is that going to kill and sap all of your joy, right? Something to think about. How about access to, let's say, gyms or fitness facilities, or what kind of equipment do you want inside of your PT facility? If you don't have, let's say, a squat rack or some dumbbells, is that a major turnoff for you? Or are you willing to kind of build that equipment out yourself, which is something you can kind of do if you really want to, right? Or just be a little bit more creative with your exercise selection, right? Do you need certain modalities, right? Is BFR important for you? Whatever it is, does the clinic actually have those things, right? The other part that I think we don't ask about enough is what kind of benefits does the clinic offer, right? So healthcare benefits as well as retirement benefits, right? Do they match? How much do they match, right? What kind of things are they offering you for retirement? Those are actually quite important, right? The other piece that's really hot on folks' mind is mentoring, right? Are there good clinicians around? And is there an opportunity to learn more from these folks, right? And I think a lot of new grads are looking for formal mentoring. So essentially, they want to have a certain amount of hours per week where they're watching another physical therapist, or they're collaborating with another physical therapist, and then they have time set aside throughout the course of the week where they kind of talk these case series, whatever it may be. And that would be ideal. But the other part is that that's a little tough. Do keep in mind that if you're in a physical therapy facility and you work 40 hours a week, there's more hours throughout the course of the week that you can come in and you can just shadow the other clinicians, get an idea of how they work, right? And then when you're working with certain clinicians or certain clients throughout the course of the week, patients, you can bounce ideas off the other mentors. I do that all the time, right? I say, hey, what do you think about this patient? I'm having a hard time with X, Y, Z. What do you think is a good, way to progress? Let me give you a few ideas, right? Help you out. You try those ideas. You talk it through with the physical therapist again. Most PTs are really open to that and they enjoy that. So if you don't get mentoring in the formal sense, is there an opportunity to get some mentoring in informal sense? When I graduated, I actually sought out mentoring from a variety of PTs that weren't in the setting that I was at currently. And I actually spent extra time outside of my work hours so I could actually learn a bit more from the PTs within the clinic, right? So I did kind of both of those things, right? And the other piece is, do they have opportunity for Con Ed, right? I think a lot of PTs will kind of hate on the mill kind of facilities, right? And to be honest, I was in physiotherapy associates, which is now Select, and I think that they can be kind of looked at as a mill type facility. But to be honest, I saw patients every 30 hours for the most part. It was rarely double booked. Wasn't as bad as some might think. And the other part is that they have a lot of continuing education in those businesses, and they kind of bake it into the, I don't know, program that they have. At least physio had certain residencies that were making. They had a lot of continuing education you can get for free, right? They had a budget that was allocated that you could use. So PT continuing education dollars. It was pretty nice. And that was important to me. And I definitely took advantage of that, especially early in my career when, education was still paramount. Still is. Education is always paramount, but a little more important at that point than it is now, right? I already said this, but it's important to be flexible. Keep in mind that if you're not seeing the population that you want to, you can go out and market and get that population. Even if you're in an in-network facility, it's just a little bit more work on your part, right? And the other part is that, and I wouldn't tell potential employers this, but this might be a stepping stone job, right? So maybe for the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to be working at this facility, but at the end of the day, that's maybe not your favorite long-term spot. And this was the case for me. So essentially, I knew that I wasn't going to stay in a facility like this long-term. I kind of wanted a more strength and fitness kind of based facility that was maybe more cash-based, to give me the opportunity to do more training, nutrition, whatever it is. And I have that now with Champion. It's amazing. But I also knew that I wanted to get my feet wet, and I wanted to see a lot of different types of things, right? I wanted to work very hard at my craft for a period of time. And it really gave me that. So just keep in mind, your first job doesn't have to be your last job, and you can always kind of work up along the way. And another good thing is that if you're going to be negotiating with the clinical director or whoever it is to try to get this job, you can talk about that, right? Just be a little cautious about saying, like, I want to use you guys for 3 years, learn a bunch from you, and then, leave, right? Don't say that. Just say, like, you would like to learn and grow, and these things are important for you in terms of leadership or growing within the company or whatever that is. So you have that ability to talk to the clinical directors and figure out if that's going to be a good fit for you, right? So, and then the last piece is really, you got to do your homework, right? You got to visit PT clinics. You got to see if you like it. Talk to the employees, talk to the boss, see what the vibe is like, see what the patients are like, see what kind of treatments they're using, see if the physical therapists are kind of excited about the work they do on a regular basis, right? Or they're just like head down, do their work, do their notes, get the heck out of there. And if that's what you want, great. I'm not trying to talk any crap on that. I think that's a fine way to do it. It's just that if you're looking for something specific, you got to kind of have to figure out if they have that specific thing, right? And I think one of the most important aspects is to be valuable to an employer, right? So essentially, PTs need to try to find the right fit for them, right? And I think it's important during your interview process that you are trying to feel that out. But you have to be a little bit careful, because someone who's hiring you may have the opportunity to hire a lot of individuals, and they're being specific, right? And if you can figure out what that is, and you can be very valuable to that, clinic, figure out what that is and try to be that person, right? That may mean that, let's say you have a little bit of a marketing background or social media background. Can you help out the clinic with some social media? Are you good at reaching out to physicians to try to establish relationships? Are you coming from another area where you already have established relationships and you can bring some of that over? Right? Do you have a specific talent or knowledge about working with, let's say, workers' comp that may reimburse a little bit better than the patients that are currently in that facility? Figure out what the facilities want and need, and see how you can be valuable. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to have empathy to whoever is trying to hire you, right? Figure out what they really want and need, and make sure it's a right fit for you. And if it's a win-win situation, that's what you're looking for, okay? So really, that's what you want at the end of the day, okay? The other piece is that reach out to all of your networks and try to network as well as possible. You never know which pathway is going to lead to some of the success in your life. Most of the coolest things that happened in my life happened via happenstance. Okay. And I was putting myself out there, right? So I blogged like a maniac. I was writing crazily. And I still am very much involved in social media. I would contact all the people out there I love to learn from. I made a lot of mentors. I got out and about. I did a lot of continuing education, right? I got really involved in the communities, like the CrossFit communities, weightlifting communities. I did a lot on top of just being a traditional kind of student or physical therapist. What happened is that the opportunities, they just pop up, right? CrossFit headquarters reached out to me and said, "Hey, do you want to be on this roundtable discussion?" I'm like, "Heck yeah, I want to do that." And when I went out there, I met some other cool people. You know what? I got a job through Power Monkey Fitness because I spoke to the people, right? And we had a lot of things in common. I wanted him to be on my podcast, Dave Durante, and then he kind of reciprocated and said, "Hey, do you want to be part of Power Monkey Fitness?" I said, "Yep." And when Power Monkey Fitness was growing and they needed another physical therapist, I recommended Dave Tilley, who was a great fit, right? And you know what happened? Dave Tilley recommended me for champion, a few years later via happenstance, right? And these are all these networks I had built over the course of time. I never planned that I was going to create this blog so that I would connect with CrossFit, so that that would connect me to other people, that would connect me to another job, would connect me to more people, that I would get another job, and that would connect me to champion, which I'm at now, and I'm very happy. That was never the plan. I just did a lot of net myself out there, and it just kind of clicked, right? And at least for me, that was the most powerful thing I could have done because it got me where I am now. So, all right, boom. So it looks like we're kind of through my spiel. Again, if you haven't listened to my spiel on this already, if you like this learning, you want to take that next step, I recommend that you go and download the Fitness Pain Free Mini Course. It's free. I'll put a link in the bio. You guys can check it out in my profile if you're watching this via Instagram. It's the next natural step if you want to learn more from me. I will leave a link in the show notes a little bit later if you're watching this past the whole live. But next, I want to see if there's any questions. So if you do have a question, just shoot into the comment section. That goes for Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. I'll grab my phone right now, see if there are any questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap it on up. Thank you guys very much for joining, by the way. I always love having all these folks on watching me. I really appreciate it. Gratitude to you guys. Let's see. Anything crazy question-wise? Okay. Sunnyside PT DPT. Thank you very much. Says his courses are great. Definitely worth the spend. Thanks, Dan. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much for grabbing the course. I appreciate it. All right. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? Shift movement science. Dave Tilley. It's funny because I was just talking to you today. I doubt you actually heard me talk about you, but all right. Scrolling. Anything else comment wise? Boom, boom, boom. I don't see anything. Okay. That looks to be it, guys. So thank you very much for joining me today. Always appreciate it. If you have any questions that you guys want me to go over in the future, please leave those questions in the comments, and then I will cover those in a future episode. Okay. And if it's something that requires a more in-depth explanation, I'll actually make an entire Fitness Pain Free show about it. I'll do a deep dive in it. Question before I leave from Charan Bukera. Apologize if I'm botching that name. Any strategies for patella alta? So essentially, if the kneecap is a little bit higher than it normally is. So I'm assuming that this individual has patellofemoral pain or some sort of anterior knee pain that's maybe influenced by what's going on at the kneecap. Essentially, a generic strategy of trying to strengthen the quad and the hip, modifying activities that are currently painful, and as that pain improves, just slowly ramping back up to the strat or the activities that used to hurt. I have an entire Fitness Pain Free show episode on evidence-based treatment for patellofemoral pain. And I also have an entire Fitness Pain Free show for a case study of someone that has patellofemoral pain. So I would highly recommend you check that out if you're looking for something that's much more in depth, right? Maybe I'll do some more show episodes on this question in the future. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. That's it for now. I will see you guys next week, 10:30 a.m. Usually, sometimes a little bit late. I apologize for that, but it's only because I'm putting this stuff there. It takes a little bit of time. Thank you. Love you much. I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.